The Kargil war mastermind, General Pervez Musharraf, has not learnt his lessons from the humiliating defeat. Musharraf, who is now seeking an active career in politics, was found boasting of Kargil exploits while addressing his party men yesterday. The general claimed that he had India and in fact the world by throat in 1999 when Pakistan took over the heights of Kargil. According to Musharraf, the battle was one which India will never forget. What's more, the former president claimed that Pakistani forces had entered the heights in 5 places, of which just one intrusion was known to Indians. Now, in May 1999, India and Pakistan, in their most serious military engagement since 1971, clashed in Kargil area of Ladakh in Jammu and Kashmir after militants backed by Pakistani troops occupied the mountain peaks of Kargil. Musharraf had made similar tall claims in 2013 when he claimed that his 99 Kargil operation was a big success militarily. Though Pakistan had initially claimed Mujahideen were not responsible for occupying strategic heights along the line of control in early 99, Musharraf later revealed in his autobiography In the Line of Fire that regular army troops had participated in the operation. Let's now go across to Strategic Affairs Editor Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, what has General Pervez Musharraf said this time around which he has not said before? Because the brazenness, the way he has actually addressed the Kargil issue, it clearly goes to show that, something that India always feared and always knew, the nefarious designs of Pakistan.
Sanket, the general is now a politician and he's speaking like one. It's a lie that there were terrorists or militants in Kargil. There was Pakistan Army, the Northern Light Infantry, that had infiltrated across 5 areas and occupied, areas between 15 to 30 kilometers deep inside Indian territory for along 150 kilometers. Now, that was known. He had India by the jugular briefly. It was tactically a brilliant operation. Strategically, it was a disaster for Pakistan. Pakistan lost the right of, raising the Jammu and Kashmir issue forever because of Kargil. Now, that's point one. Point two, Musharraf did not even have the guts to own up that it was the Pakistan Army, the Northern Light Infantry that had done it. In the summer of 1999, they kept raising the bogey that these were militants and terrorists, which was not true. These were regular soldiers of the Pakistan Army and their paramilitary. He's said this before. He said it again, but now he's saying it because now he's a politician. He's fighting elections. He wants to fight elections even at municipal body levels. Now, the thunderous applause that you heard at this rally, Sanket, that is indicative of why this was said. What is worse for Pakistan is that the world treats Pakistan like a terror state, like a terror sponsor state and an international migraine because of what Musharraf and subsequent other generals did, Sanket.
Absolutely, Gaurav. Do stay on the phone. We'll take more questions from you. I'm also joined in by Lieutenant General Raj Kadyan at this moment. Lieutenant General Kadyan, what do you make of this statement that has been made? Pervez Musharraf, the politician. But my point is, this is something that India knew all along.
Musharraf today is a kind of a criminal. He is a fugitive in his own country. He is facing serious charges of murder and treason. He is therefore looking to make his space in the political arena. That is the motivation why he has come out with it. There is nothing new in it. It is true that Pakistan initially had the tactical advantage because we were not aware 27 years that LOC had been peaceful. It is a normal matter of trust between 2 neighboring countries. They broke that trust. However, once the Indian Army was able to gather its wits, they were pushed back from most of the areas, and rest of the areas they withdrew on their own. Tactically, it may have been a success initially, but in the overall context, in the international field, I think Pakistan is a big loser. Secondly, as a military commander, I think it is a big failure on the part of Musharraf. It's a matter of shame. It is totally unofficer-like that you send your soldiers across, then you don't even recognize that they were your soldiers. Their dead bodies had to be buried by the Indian Army. Their identification papers on them. I do not know how the Pakistani families of those martyrs would have felt. Of course, Pakistan being a dictatorship, nothing comes out of it. But it was a tactical, yes, there was an advantage. They were would have controlled in case they had stayed on there, our road from Srinagar to Leh. However, in the strategic sense, it was a big disaster. Pakistan lost internationally. They lost the confidence of most of the international community. They were critical. They called Pakistan the aggressor. It was Indian political leadership's astuteness that we were told not even cross the LOC. We didn't want to escalate the issue. However, they were pushed back from most of the heights, and one or two that were left in their hands, they voluntarily, Nawaz Sharif rushed to Clinton in America, and they pulled out of their own. They realized the mistake.
Right. Right. Lieutenant General Raj Kadia, many thanks for joining us at this moment. We also have defense expert Sushant Sareen with us at this moment. Mr. Sareen, if you allow me, we'll come to you in just a short moment. Let's quickly listen in, for your benefit also. Let's quickly listen in to what former army commander as well as former president of Pakistan. Now, Mr. Sareen, if you heard what General Pervez Musharraf has said, first of all, I would want to know from you, has he so openly accepted this in the past ever? And what exactly seems to be your analysis about what Pervez Musharraf is doing? Because by boasting about Kargil, it almost appears that he is trying to, seek glory in humiliation.
Well, I suppose that is the want of the Pakistanis. That's what they do. So the 1965 war also they had won. The 71 war also they had won. Only, it was the perfidious Indians who kind of double-crossed them, and that is how they had to let go of half their country. So that aside, I think, what Musharraf has said has been best summed up by the former Pakistan ambassador to the US, Hussein Haqqani, who in a tweet said that this reflects the denial, the delusion and the dementia of of Musharraf and in fact even of the Pakistan army. There are so many logical fallacies and fallacies of fact in what Musharraf is trying to say that it's kind of ridiculous what he's trying to project himself to be. Now, General Qadian was saying that, and he's quite right when he says that when the Pakistanis mounted the Kargil attack, it did catch us by surprise, and we were a little nonplussed initially. But once the Indian side got its feet firmly on the ground, then, it was a series of humiliations, and Musharraf managed to do something which no other general before him had managed to do, which was to make his soldiers eat grass. Because if you remember a Time magazine article at that point of time, when they when they were doing autopsies of some of the Pakistani soldiers who had died in Kargil, they found grass in their stomach. So I think Musharraf's greatest achievement was that he made the Pakistani army eat grass. And then, despite that, they had to lose the war. So the less spoken about Musharraf, the better, because he is the toilet paper and he is history. He's already been flushed out, but occasionally he just keeps raising the sting. But I think on one issue he's quite right, that India will never forget Kargil for two reasons. Number one, for the way the Pakistani backside was kicked. And the second reason why India will never forget it is because it reflected Pakistan's unremitting perfidy towards India.
All right. Mr. Sareen, many thanks for joining us at this moment. We are also joined in by Major General Afsar Karim at this moment. Major General Karim, many thanks for joining us at this moment, sir. Would love to know your opinion about what General Pervez Musharraf has actually said.
You see, the first thing it should be remembered that Kargil war was the greatest military and strategic disaster for Pakistan. The second point is that Musharraf always boasts of things which he shouldn't boast about, which is actually a shameful affair. And also he tells lies. Now, having said this, we must remember there were two phases of war. In the first phase of war, Indian Army was surprised, and it was a complete failure of command and intelligence system of Indian Army. So there we have to accept that Pakistani Army succeeded in coming to the places where they should have been detected before they arrived there. But in that process, we suffered some casualties. But after that, once the Indian Army was prepared and went for action, they threw every one of the Pakistani pickets out and inflicted very large casualties. So in overall context, the operation was ill-conceived by Musharraf. It was bound to fail, and it failed, and it brought very bad name to Pakistan internationally, and militarily it was defeated.
That's right. Major General Afsar Karim, many thanks for joining us at this moment. Before we wrap up this particular story, let's quickly get in a word from Gaurav Sawant once again. Gaurav, 16 years ago, you did cover the Kargil, the Kargil war. Just bring us up to speed with what you remember at that moment. How it is, now, 16 years later, just a case of the general who has absolutely nothing to show for, politically at this moment, is just seeking glory and humiliation.
Sanket, I was in that battle zone for 2.5 months. And this was really a surprise for the Indian Army, because initially when the army got there, the Pakistanis were on every hill, and that is how tactically they had come deep inside, and they were targeting the Srinagar-Leh highway, and they were targeting Indian Army convoys. That is a fact. It was tactically a brilliant operation by Pervez Musharraf. But the problem with Pervez Musharraf is, even though he had become the army chief, he remained a tactical commander. He remained a company commander in his head, because he did not think long-term perspective. Now, the moment the Indian political, diplomatic and military leadership came together, they mounted such a strong counter-offensive, as Sushant Sareen rightly pointed out, and as we had reported during Kargil, Pakistani soldiers had no food, their supply chain was cut off, they had run out of ammunition, they were putting up white flags everywhere, they were desperate to surrender wherever they could. Well, they continue to hold one or two tactically superior peaks. There is no denying that fact. Even today. But the fact remains, it was strategically a disaster for Pakistan, a disaster for Musharraf in the long run. He's been consigned to the waste paper basket of history as far as Pakistan is concerned. That remains a fact, and he raises the Kargil bogey only to remain relevant.